Hey, it's Liz DiAlto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Liz DiAlto here, your host for Untamed the Wild Soul Woman, a virtual conversation series where I get to dig in with some of the most powerful and inspiring women I know around how they transcend their struggles, their fears, and live really meaningful lives on their own terms. Not the way they think they should, the way everyone tells them they're supposed to, but exactly how they want to. So today I have a dear friend, Terri Cole. Terri Cole this year in 2014, even though we're now in the first couple of days of 2015, has become one of my favorite people on the planet. She has all these amazing accolades, which you could read about in her official bio. She's a psychotherapist. She's a coach. She works with celebrities. She's an incredible meditation teacher, but she is absolutely one of the most hilarious people I've ever met, and just super raw, honest, open, tells it like it is. And that's just always one of my favorite qualities in human beings. So this is for sure going to be an amazing interview. So Terri, thank you so much for saying yes.
Why, thanks for having me.
The first question that I'm asking every single woman has been, what do you love about being a woman?
So many things I love about being a woman. I love being a nurturer to my family, to my husband, to my friends. Like, I love, as much as I've resisted and I'm sort of a rebel against a lot of the roles that people think we should do, there are some roles that I truly love. I love being the bridge between other people. I love sharing the people that I love. So that's one thing that I love, is really being the nurturer. That comes incredibly naturally to most women, and men too, not all, but that's one thing that I love.
And you're so amazing at that. What you just said, being the bridge between people, you're so generous with like introductions and sharing and all of that. So you said something that I'd love to like unpack and get into a little bit about being a rebel against a lot of the more traditional roles. Mm-hmm. Why? Tell me all about it.
So many reasons. Well, part of it is that I was raised in a family where until I was 13, my parents were still married. And the way that their marriage was, it wasn't a horribly abusive marriage. It just wasn't a super happy marriage. And so early on, my mother basically taught me, like, get an education, make your own money, so love can be a choice.
Ooh.
Right? So
nice, Mom.
I know, right? How she got all that wisdom, I'm sure, is from living it. But so that's one thing where a lot of my girlfriends that I grew up with, I have tons of friends, obviously, but I have the same group of women that I've been friends with since second grade. And almost all of them, except one other, got married very young to high school sweethearts that I've known them all of my life. They're all still married. And I didn't reject it with any vehemence. It just wasn't going to be for me. I knew that. So I graduated college. I moved directly into New York City, into a studio with another friend of mine, had no money. But rejecting the notion that my value was less than anyone else's because I didn't choose to get married young, or that I needed that. So that was one thing. Rejecting the notion that I couldn't be all the things that I am. Men would, when I was dating, back in the day, it was almost like it was too much. I couldn't be smart, assertive, pretty, and funny. But I was, and I am all those things. And it's like, I knew that I rejected the traditional way of dating as well. I mean, every time I was in a lot of long-term relationships, they would get to the point where the other person would be like, hey, I think we should get married. And I'm like, okay, we're breaking up. Like, I had no real interest in that. I was like, why? So anyway, once I got to the point in my life where I decided, truly, I had built such a beautiful life. It was such a fun party that in order to commit to someone or to want that with someone, they would really need to bring something super awesome to the already awesome party that was my life. And that didn't happen until I met my husband, Vic, and then that happened.
How long have you guys been married now?
We've been together 17 years, married 15.
Cool. And I love, here's what I love so much about this. So this is the time we're doing this interview. It's going to go live in February, but we're doing this like just after the holidays. So it's like high engagement season. And you see, I was logged off Facebook for most of it, but even just yesterday, I saw a post of someone clearly feeling a bit insecure about it, but like posting about how they didn't, you know, like one of those situations. And I think it still is like this very pervasive thing that even those of us who do, like you were saying, reject this traditional path that still is very much alive, even though our culture is much more progressive now than it ever has been. There are still those moments of being like, is something wrong with me? Should I want that? And I've known, I remember when I was a personal trainer in Hoboken, New Jersey. So right around that same lifestyle that you were describing, a lot of like powerful, like career driven New York City women. And I remember feeling like their kind of pain around, I'm so successful, but there's this gaping hole of like this missing love. And feeling judged or ashamed about it. But the way you just described that as, I just created this beautiful party, and in order for someone to be permanently invited, they had to bring something really amazing. So what was it about Vic? What was the like, how did you, I feel like this is a stupid question, but it's not. How did you know?
It's actually a great question, because I find, being a psychotherapist, a lot of my demographic are very successful women who do have certain, in their mind, you know, holes in the tapestry of their life, and they're trying to figure out if that's okay or not. I used to never think I would ever know, and that's the truth. And so when people would say, "Oh, you just know," before I knew, I was like, "F you," like, just shut up. Like, I'm never going to know. I'm too neurotic. I'm not like you. Trust me, I'm not like anybody. You know, of course, we all think we're so super special. But honestly, I was like, I'm really not like you, whoever that was. On paper, the irony of it, one thing I would say to anyone who is looking to be partnered and isn't partnered right now is really thinking about changing the frame on it a little bit, from calling in the one or looking for or trying to get. And I can tell you, and you and I have already talked about this in the past because we're friends, about what happens when you put your energy inward. And I only met Vic when I really had decided that I was really complete on my own, and that if to be looking for someone, I didn't need someone to fill anything, because I was doing all of this work. I'd been in therapy since I was 19 years old, since I was in college. I stopped drinking my senior year in college. I'd been on the self-help path for so many years before I met Vic. And I'd said to my girlfriends before I met him, I said, listen, I'm not dating anyone who hasn't had 20 years of therapy. Keep in mind, I was only early 30s at the time. They're like, first of all, you're going to have an old man. And secondly, you're never going to find that was their trip. And I said, no, you know what? I really think I will. And I don't think I'm going to find that. I think I'm going to be found. Like, I shifted the mindset. I had stopped looking, right? Stopped looking. So with Vic, on the first date, I said, how do you feel about therapy? And he was like, oh, I'm a big fan. And those of you that don't know my story, which is probably many of your people, is my husband was widowed when the boys, he has 3 sons, and now they're my sons, my 3 sons, as I like to say. But he had his wife died when she was 29 and when he was only 29, and left him with a 5, a 3, and a 9-month-old. So by the time I came in, it was like 12 years later. So the boys were early teens and really mad and just in trouble, right? They were just, the whole place was just falling apart. So like from the outside, you'd be like, oh, that sounds excellent. Let's go with a guy who's been widowed and divorced and lives in Elizabeth, New Jersey with 3 rotten acting out teenagers. Sounds like fun. Don't you want that? I was like, perfection. So the whole list that you may have of how what the circumstance or whatever, I say you move that list into, how do you want to feel in your life all the time? And then you will draw that right person to you. So with Vic, he was the first person I'd ever met, regardless of what that external circumstance looked like, that I think for the first time in my entire adult life, I actually exhaled. like a guy who could get tickets to the opera, who had an IRA, who owned his own home, who like had a clue, who had his own very successful career. So he wasn't at all threatened by my career, and still was very chivalrous and paid for everything and all of those things that some people may want, some people don't want. I did, because I had been in a position so many times previous to that where I was the one who made all the money in the relationship, or it certainly out-earned my boyfriend so much of the time, which always led to problems. I would be like, but I can afford to take us on vacation. Let's just go away. And there's always some resentment, at least my experience. I'm not saying there always has to be. I can just say what happened for me. And so with Vic, all of the stuff that mattered to me was in place. So on date one, I said, how much, are you, what do you think about therapy? He said, I'm a big fan. And I said, how big? And he said, oh, I've had a ton of therapy. I was like, if you had to estimate, how many years? He was like, at least 20 years.
You were like, yes.
I was like, date 2 can happen then, because here you go. This is what I ordered up.
So hilarious.
Isn't that great?
It's so great. And I also love too in there, even how you mentioned how, a desire to be taken care of financially, not completely, but just like someone who can hang with you. I don't think there's any shame in that.
There's not. There really isn't. And yet I find that people are one way or the other about it. Like I didn't look at it. I mean, I feel like Vic could have gone either way. He always wanted to pay for everything. But if I was like, hey, that's offensive to me, he would have been like, well, okay, I guess you could pay for something.
Yeah.
And so much of that is our own downloaded stuff, from childhood and family of origin.
Yeah, yeah. But, and I, this is a conversation I've had with some of the other women in the series, but something that Mike and I even talk about all the time too, is I don't need to reject all gender role stuff. I actually do kind of still crave some of it. And whatever I choose to subscribe to is my choice. Kind of like what you said earlier about love being a choice. I get to try things on, reject certain things, question everything, and then be like, okay, cool. Exactly what you said. I like the way this one makes me feel, so I'm okay with it. But there's that having run it through my own filter first, instead of just blindly being like, okay, this is the way things are. I love that so much.
Yep.
I want to ask you more about, this came up also if you've been watching the series, if you haven't seen yet my interview with Jody England, about being a powerful woman in relationship and going through that history of dating and feeling like, oh, I'm too much, or maybe I should dial it down. The thing you said that I really appreciate the most was, I can be all the things. I could be pretty and funny and smart and successful, and I don't have to pretend to not be any of it. Did you always feel that way, or was that something you arrived at eventually?
Oh, I definitely arrived at it eventually, but pretty young in my life, I realized that I was playing this role. Like, maybe friends would be like, you should be more feminine, like with quotes around it. You should, whatever that meant. And I remember thinking, here's the thing, I could probably pretend for even a decent period of time, but sooner or later, this person's going to realize I'm not demure in any way. Like, I'm not. If somebody attacks us, I will be the one who's elbowing someone in the eyeball, like, without a thought. And I'm sure Vic would too, but I don't need to be saved. And I never needed to be saved, but I needed to be loved fully. And I needed for Vic to be able to see, and he's so wise. He's so, he lets me think in some ways that, I'm running it all, and yet he's so chill. He's such a Pisces. He's 10 years older than me. He'll always say, like, I'll get all crazy offended by something. This dude never gets offended, even when I think he should. I'm like, that was a crack. Like, that person was, and he was like, what does it matter, Terri? And I'm like, well, it matters because he's an asshole. That's why it matters. Getting all like crazy. And he's like, oh, my little feisty Aries.
Aww.
Like, but he's
so
not judging me.
Right.
He's not mocking me. And he really does. I mean, this is one thing I think that a good relationship, a truly good partnership can provide is he absolutely helps me stretch to be a better person than I would be without him. Mm. Like, he's taught me so much about things I always wanted to learn about. Like, I'm just a middle-class girl from New Jersey, and he's a middle-class boy from New Jersey, but he became so learned in everything, classical music and jazz and history and politics and religion. He knows everything. And so I would literally, in the beginning when we met, we would just take rides. We would just ride. We would just get in the car and ride for like 4 hours anywhere. We'd end up like in Boston and be like, oh, look, we're in Boston. We just always wanted to be together. So we'd be like, let's just get in the car and see where we go. This is when we were still living in Jersey. And I would be like, okay, World War I. Can you just go back to the beginning? What happened? He would literally be, and one time he was like, so much for that public school, Hackensack High School education. He said it kidding, and I was like, seriously? That hurt my feelings so much, and if you ever say anything like that again, I will never ask you another question. He was like, oh my God, I'm only kidding. Okay, World War I. So I was like, oh my God, do you think I'm dumb? He's like, Terri, no, I don't. I was like, that's just not my best suit.
Right, yeah, I don't remember historical facts, but I'd love to hear them out of your mouth.
Exactly, and tell like a story. He would always like find a way to like. I mean, every war ever. I'm like, wait, I get them mixed up. He's like, oh my God.
Oh, it's so sweet. I love these stories. So, you mentioned that you work with a lot of women who this is their thing, right? This is their hang up. This is their fear. And it's been one of my primary fears in life until I met Mike. I'm never going to meet a man who can match me or who can hang with me, who can handle me, like insert whatever word you want to use. Yep. How do you help people, or what advice do you give them on navigating that? Because we get stuck in that rut. As long as we're believing it, we're constantly meeting people to prove ourselves right. How do you help them break the pattern and open up to that place where they can be the one they want? Yeah.
Well, first of all, the first thing that I work with women on who are in this situation around love is we really unpack their downloaded blueprint around love, which is something that I have, and anyone watching can have it. I will give it to them because it's super helpful. It's a series of questions, and what it does is that it explains the truth about our unconscious limiting beliefs around love, our own lovability, our own value, our own worthiness, what it means to be feminine, what it means to be someone's girlfriend or their wife, eventually a mother perhaps. There's a lot of limiting stuff. So we don't look at the stuff that's great, right? Because thanks, mom and dad, that's great. But it's only the stuff that is you feel like the thing is eluding you that we really need to unpack and go, okay, so why? Why is it eluding you? What is happening? When you answer these questions of what did love look like in your family of origin? How was your parents' relationship? So in my own unpacking of my own downloaded blueprint, right, I was able to see how my beliefs around love came into being in the world. Now, what it also does is it has whoever's doing the downloaded blueprint, it has you realize this isn't the way it is, with quotes around it. This is just the way it was for my parents, or just the way it was in the house that I grew up in, or the family culture that I grew up in. So I have the power to change that if I want it to be different. And so with my own parents and my own life and my own story around love, I saw this unevenness. I saw my father made all the money, so therefore he had all the power in a way. I was like, yeah, okay, definitely, I do not want that. No way is anyone telling me anything about how much money I can spend or how I can spend it. But then I feel like in the beginning, I went so much the other way that I didn't know how to partner with someone. I was too busy being like, hey, are we both clear that you're not the boss of me? Because you're not. My boyfriends are like, yeah, I got it. I understand.
I'm dying because, hello.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, we're both in agreement, right? You have no power over me. They're like, okay, I got it. So it's so true, right? But it's almost like when you're not complete about it, it's too much. I was too forcefully beating the drum of you're not the boss of me. Where when you actually got that inside, there's no need to like beat the hell out of that conversation. I drew someone to me who had no desire to be the boss of me, who was very much happy to just allow each other to lead. Because with Vic, there were also times, I mean, again, those of you who don't know my story, I got diagnosed. Vic's wife died of cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer only a couple of months into my relationship with Vic. We weren't even married yet.
Oh my God.
So this is something where it would never have been in my life that I would have allowed myself to lean on someone, to even think that who would have the capacity. Especially, I was so sensitive to the fact that the boys and Vic lost their beautiful Donna when the kids were so little. Poor Vic, it was like the love of his life until me, right? I mean, so I feel like he has two loves of his life, Donna and then me. She was also an Aries, the only other Aries in his life, just saying. Not that I live my life by that, but I'm just saying, there's some similarities. And in that point in my life, I had no choice. My father had just died very suddenly, and that was 2 months in. And then 3 months in, I find this huge lump in the base of my throat and get diagnosed with cancer. And I had to have faith that Vic wasn't going to run away, being like, oh yeah, I saw this movie and the ending sucks, so I don't want to do this, you know what I mean? And imagine the boys who were like, seriously? Of course we love her, she's amazing, and now she's going to die or leave, because that's all women ever do, they just die or leave. Exactly, please. So much crying for that. For so long, I couldn't even worry about or think about like cancer. Of course, that was scary, but I was more like, how do I protect them? But with Vic, I knew I didn't have to. And he went to every single appointment. From the beginning, he's like, you're going to be fine. It's going to be great. Let's do it. It's okay. He became an expert on the kind of cancer that I had. Every book in the world, every expert in the, like, he just showed up in a way that I didn't even know was possible for a love relationship. I expect my female friends to show up that way, obviously, duh. And my mom and my closest sister, right? I certainly expected them to be like moving mountains to make sure you are okay. But I feel so blessed that I intuited that he could do it. And he didn't even let me stop him from, like he just did it. He just took control. But I learned so much about myself in that process and about what it looks like to allow yourself to be vulnerable in a real way, which was so scary. And I remember saying to my therapist at the time, I was so conscious of like allowing myself to lean on him and to be as scared as I really was. Because in the beginning, I was like, it's fine. Like there was no time to feel like I'd waited my whole life to find this guy and these kids, to find my family. And now I get diagnosed with cancer. I was like, are you kidding me? So now they're in love with me, and how torturous that is, for them. And I said to my therapist at the time, Ruth, I said, here's the thing. Like, if I let him do this, then he will truly have the power to annihilate me if he's not who I think he is. And she was like, it's worth the risk. You think it's worth the risk? And I was like, well, it's too late. Like, because I don't even know, I can't go backward. Like, I already am madly, deeply, ridiculously, hopelessly in love with this dude. So if I'm off and he's a sociopath, I'll be super sad, and hopefully I'll live. But of course, that was 17 years ago, and he's not a sociopath. Sorry to make you cry now. I'm crying too.
It's all good. This is how we roll. We know this.
Tissues, please.
Again, there's just so much great stuff in there to dive a little more deeper in. This thing about allowing yourself to lean on someone when you've taken care of yourself by choice your whole life. Mm-hmm. I think so many women can probably relate to that. Because people grow up and they see, just what you described, right? Like, I don't want this. I don't want what I saw growing up, or I don't believe in this, or whatever. I could do it myself. Did you want to, run it all? Were you just like, forget it, let me crawl into a hole? Like, how did you deal with those moments when you were like, I can't? Because I'm sure that happened.
It's funny. I say this because it's the truth, and I never thought it would even be possible, but from the beginning with Vic, no matter how bad it got, because keep in mind, the kids were teenagers, it got bad. And, the end of my story, we got robbed at gunpoint. Like, we have a lot of things that happen in a very short period of time within the relationship. But I always wanted to be with him more than I wanted to do anything else. So it doesn't matter. He could be, we live half upstate and half in the East Village. He literally would be getting in the truck and be like, okay, I'm going to the dump. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting my coffee to go. I'm coming. I want to come. Like, why do you want to go to the dump? Everything is better with him. That's it. So I never, even when things were really rough with the kids, and of course I got us into family therapy. The second I walked in, I was like, yeah, okay, this is a disaster zone right here. But it never entered my mind. Like, once I was with Vic, I literally could not picture my life without him. So, it's like, of course I fell in love with the boys, but I was so in love with him. And I saw the potential for him to be I knew I would be so good for him too, that it was this mutuality that he could have had like 20 teenagers. And I'm not kidding. I would have been like, we'll figure it out. Therapy 5 days a week, whatever. Like, love will find a way. So I didn't want to. But what I did do is there were things that I did. So how did I deal with all of those traumatic events happening in such a short period of time? Of course, I was in therapy. I also took up boxing, which was so good because I was never great with my anger. Like, I could draw a boundary with people. I was good with words, but of like straight up anger, because I grew up in a very waspy household where nobody ever fought, like ever, even though my parents got divorced. Like, literally there was not a fight ever in the house. So anybody raising their voice, I would be like, completely flip out. like, what the hell? Something terrible is going to happen. So I needed a way to get out the angry feelings that I was experiencing and how betrayed I felt by my body. I was like, I've been a vegetarian since I'm 19 years old. How do I have cancer? Like, what? Although I wasn't living like healthy, I was a talent agent, and basically living on caffeine and nicotine and, the red eye basically that was what my life was made up of. So I wasn't exactly healthy, which I have to say, getting cancer really twice actually really motivated me to get healthy and to look at that.
Anger, that's such a good one. That's not really something I was able to deal with until recently either. And I did grow up in a house where people fought all the time. So yelling was normal. But I went the opposite way. I'm like, I'm not going to yell. What does that mean when you feel friggin' pissed off? So thank you for describing that you could just release those feelings without having to direct it at a human and say things you don't mean and be really hurtful.
And the more, also though, for people listening, the more honest you are about your feelings, right? So when you're angry, stop making yourself wrong for being angry. You have to learn how to functionally release that and then be able to put words on it. Like, anger is a very important emotion. We have all of there's the 6 essential human emotions, and anger is one of them, where you can't just decide you had a bad experience as a child with anger, and so now you're not going to do that one anymore. Like, it will come out in a passive-aggressive way. It'll come out sideways. What Freud says about feelings themselves, is like humans are like pot-belly stoves. And no matter how much paper you shove down the flue, those feelings have to come out. So either they'll come out in some messed up, indirect, I have no idea, like, stub my toe, kick the dog kind of way, with no satisfaction and poor dog, right? Because that doesn't feel good. Even if you explode on the taxi driver, right? Mm-hmm. The truth is you are not going to feel resolved around that anger because you're really not mad at the taxi driver. You're just having a transference. So I feel like so much of the work that I do with my clients, and this ties directly into fear, is that many women fear their own anger. And so you've got to make friends with that emotion and stop making yourself wrong for having it. And I don't say pick up a sledgehammer and whack someone on the head with it, verbally or actually. Learning. So with my clients, I'll teach them that there's a way, that there's language that you can use that will satisfy that, even if in the beginning, like, you do it badly. So when I started getting healthier on my anger, I could only talk about it in the past tense. I could only say, yesterday I was really mad at you. I could never say, I'm mad at you now.
Oh, that's so funny.
That was like so threatening. But to say, when that thing happened, I was mad. Somehow, I was at least acknowledging it. One of my sisters, who's like terrible with her anger, still says, "Oh, I was so annoyed." So we misname it. We say annoyed instead of pissed off, Yeah. And I'm always saying to her, Kim, just say you're mad because you're mad. You're not annoyed. They're different things. Like, you're misnaming that,
It's so great. And what you said, we fear our own anger, that was for sure me. Because I knew deep down inside it could be real ugly if it came out. And then, lo and behold, there it was. And it was.
Yep. But the fear you felt, though, tell me, do you think that that fear is like the little kid fear?
Yeah. Well, it's almost like I don't want to witness myself behave in this way that made me so uncomfortable when I was little, all those years.
Yep. Because what I find with my clients is that when we have these downloaded blueprints and these patterns around communication, around everything, anything that doesn't work in your life, I promise you, if you connect the dots backwards far enough, you will find the original injury. And it's that situation that you have to figure out.
Yes.
But so much of why we feel paralyzed is that as a child, as a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, you are not empowered to be like, hey, people, hey, there's a better way to do this. I don't like this. I'm going to get in my car and get my own apartment. Like, we can't do that. And so we're being taught by them. We're taught this dysfunctional way of processing anger or other feelings, whatever they may be. And so what happens is now you're grown up. And for me, I remember when I was in college, my college boyfriend, I couldn't deal with anger at all, right, as I said. But what happens in a system, my family system, is that no one's allowed to be angry, but everyone's royally pissed off. So now all that seething is right underneath. And now the system has to do something to get rid of that, right? So usually they'll pick one person who becomes the identified patient or the scapegoat. So they're the person that we can all agree is an idiot. So now we're all the veiled frustration of the group is going to get all out on this person who's the problem, right? Poor one of my sisters is the scapegoat. Terrible. I'm pretty glad it wasn't me, but my role wasn't free either because I was the hero child. So that was like you have to overfunction in every way possible, right? So wait, there was a point though. What was the point about? I said to my college boyfriend, I said, listen, and he came from a really healthy system. He was an only child, and they talked about everything. Father was Italian, mother was Jewish, which is like a talky family.
Yes.
People get mad, and then they forgive, and I was like, what is going on here? And I remember saying to him, listen, I cannot deal with the anger. And he's like, wait a minute, you telling me I can never get angry with you? I was like, yep. He was like, I don't know that I could do that, And I was like, well, that's the deal. So take it or leave it. He's like, we're already at a take it or leave it. You just brought it up,
Oh my God.
Like the worst negotiator ever. I was like, yeah, no anger. He's like, okay, I'll do my best.
Yikes.
I was shocked we didn't make it.
So you mentioned earlier passive aggressive, and you and I, like many months ago, had a great conversation around this. And I think it's something that's pervasive and very unconscious. Like, we don't know when we do it. Sometimes we don't even realize when we're like receiving the passive aggressive behavior. And you had described it. You explained it probably better than I've ever heard anyone describe it before. So can you talk about passive aggressive behavior a little bit?
Absolutely. And it's actually so brilliant that you brought it up because it's something that is you're totally right that people don't know because I was a therapist and I didn't know until I knew. And that was probably 15 years ago is when I had this brilliant therapist who helped me truly understand how it was playing out in my own relationship. So here's the thing with passive aggressive anger is that some people are very uncomfortable with their anger, right? So the way that I was, the way my husband grew up in a family with a lot of fighting. And so he went the way of you where it was like, no, not going to fight, not going to raise my, not going to do that. When what passive aggressive anger is that the person who is being passive aggressive is uncomfortable with their anger. So what they do is they disavow it in some way. So all of you ladies, men too, but mostly ladies watching, listening, know that when you go, you're mad at your boyfriend, your spouse, whatever, and they go, what's wrong? And you're like, fine, nothing. What? Fine. I'm fine. Like, you're so not fine. And obviously your words are saying fine and you're angry. This is coming out. All people do this at one point or another. That's you being un-okay. You are not okay with your anger. But you need him to feel it. You need that person to feel it. So you disavow the anger. So imagine this is the anger. The hand is the anger. And it's like you chop it off. And then you take it and it's like you cram it down the other person's throat. And I'm going to tell you how you do that. When someone in your life or you does something that you know for sure consciously is going to enrage the other person. That's when you know you're being passive aggressive, right? You know it. It's not like a surprise. And then what happens is they get to be, so you blow up and go, hi, we're supposed to be leaving in 10 minutes. Why are you not even in the shower yet? You always do this, blah, blah, blah. Then they get to go, hey, back up, relax. What are you so mad about? So they get the discharge of their anger charge. Now you feel your actual anger and then the anger that they shove down your throat. It's so brutal. So that was so complicated. So how I learned it, I had this therapist who I asked her, what is the deal? Vic and I used to fight about time. I was perpetually crazy early, and I was like a time Nazi, right, about time. If anyone was late, sometimes I would leave restaurants like I was that person. And he was someone who was always late. So we never fought about anything but that. I'd be sitting in the car waiting for him, being like, beeping the horn like a psycho. Like, who does that? You're psychotic. Stop it.
My grandpa used to do that. You always do. Pop's ready in the driveway.
Where he's like, everyone get your asses out here. And then I'd be mad the whole way that wherever we're going. So when Ruth explained to me what the deal was happening, my therapist at the time, instead of telling Vic, and Vic had a lot of therapy, as I previously said, so it isn't like he'd be like, what? But I figured, let's just play it out. And then I can point it out in a very specific way. So we're going to a wedding. He's leaving. I'm already dressed. He's leaving he's just going to go to Home Depot real quick. And I was like, normally I'd be like, you don't have time to go to Home Depot, blah, blah. And I was like, fine. So I sat there meditating the whole time, being like, no matter how long it takes him and no matter how late we're going to be to this wedding, do not get provoked. I will not be provoked. No, I will not get activated. He comes back now with wood on the top of the car. And there's 5 minutes until we're supposed to be on the road because this thing is an hour and a half away, right? And he's like, I'm changing the dance. So instead of being mad, I'm like, he comes in, he's like, the guy in front of me was driving real slow. Like all the shit that people who are always late say, lost my cell phone, my dog ate my homework, whatever. I was like, babe, it's cool. Just get in the shower. Your tux is up there. Like, we're all good. He's like, he keeps explaining, doing the old dance where I'm like, babe, we're good. It doesn't matter. If we're late, we'll sit in the back. Don't worry about it. Which, of course, I would never say. I always have to be in the front row of, like, the church. Never would I miss the actual ceremony because I'm psycho. Like, that's so rude, you know? So he's still talking. I was like, babe, get in the shower. We're fine. So he gets in the shower, and we're in the car now. And actually, we end up being there perfectly on time. Everything was fine. But as we're going, and now, since I'm not taking the bait, he's not getting to discharge the anger. So he's like, so what's going on? You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah. So I explained to him. I said, Ruth thinks that this is the dance that we're doing, blah, blah, blah. So from that point forward, at first he was like, I don't know about that. I was like, listen, all I'm telling you is that I can barely manage my own anger. So I'm not managing yours. I'm not fighting with you about time. So whatever I need to do to never have a conversation about time again, that's what I'm doing. And I want to know if you're down for that. And he was like, okay. And really, that was 15 years ago. And I got to say, we'll never fight about time anymore.
It's cool. Yeah. It's so, man, passive aggressive. It's like the sneakiest thing ever.
It is. But here's the thing. Women watching, listening, men too. When you're dialed into how you feel, so are you rocking a meditation practice? Do you have some stillness and silence internally? Do you have any space? So that when you have a feeling, instead of just going boom, right? You now have a choice. Like you need the 2-second delay or the 1.5-second delay that meditation provides, at least for me. I'm sure other things provide it too, but I feel like meditation, I know for sure provides it. So you could think of something else if you don't meditate, or just meditate because it's just easy and it's free, right? It's not hard to do. If you can be dialed into how you feel, you know when you're angry. And when someone asks you if you're angry and you are, don't say no. Say yes. And then even if you don't have the words, buy yourself time. If the person goes, I don't think you have a right to be angry, you can say, listen, I already am angry. So it doesn't matter whether you think I have a right to it or not. Like this is a whole other thing that I find with my female clients is they feel like they have to convince someone that they have a right to how they feel. And as long as you're not blaming that person for how you feel, like you feel the way you feel. Nobody makes us feel anything.
Yes, thank you.
Right? Right? We respond, we react. But most of that is about us. As Don Miguel Ruiz would tell you, right, in the 4 agreements. Every person is looking at life through their own nightmare. No offense, but it's true. Yeah. So when it's negative, it's like, oh, is he just like my father actually? Or I'm just seeing it that way?
Yeah. Yeah, I went to just one day. She does 4 days, but I just went to one day of Byron Katie's New Year's mental cleanse this past week. She's such a gangster. Like,
Oh God, I love her.
she's literally imperturbable, it's amazing to watch. But the thing she said that blew my mind that I had not even considered before, and I've read like 2 of her books and listened on Audible, is it's not even just the thoughts we're having that we're attaching to. We create this mental movie that doesn't even exist. Like when we have that thought, or we're blaming, or we're putting something that's ours on someone else, we're literally picturing something that's not true.
Yeah.
We're believing it, and then that's what's sparking our reactions or behaviors. So it's just so freeing to do what you're saying, to own your emotion, and to be like, oh my God, yeah, it's me. It's always me. It's always triggering me. But it's painful. It's so painful to be like, son of a bitch, it's always me.
Yeah.
This thing that I thought I never was, this thing I've been trying my whole life not to be, I am that thing.
Yep. And listen, it's painful in the beginning realization, but the truth is it's super empowering, because since it can only be you because it's your life, you have the power to change what isn't working. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have a big hot emotion around something, I want you to ask yourself, where have I felt like this before? Who does this person remind me of?
Yeah.
Right? Because now you're starting to go, oh, I'm connecting the dots back to something else.
Yeah.
And that is what liberates you. That is what frees you from this repetition, where when you can then figure out the original injury, you don't need to play it out anymore, because we can only talk it out or act it out. That's it. 2 choices. There's no more. That's it.
It's so great. And then there's this thing, like it feels like a lot of work, and it is this like radical self-responsibility. But then again, like on the other side of it, that just like I was telling someone about it yesterday. I'm like, literally, I'm pretty sure someone could like walk into Byron Katie's house, take a dump in the middle of her living room, and she'd be like, huh.
That happened. Right. But the power of just deciding that you will not be provocable, that literally you are, my friend Jocelyn Herman says, become unmessable with.
Nice.
That's like a word, where you have control. And it's only the things that we make it mean. Like, so we write a script, we create meaning around someone's behavior. So I have a client who always wants her suitors to come to pick her up at her apartment. And that's fine. That's old school. She's old fashioned, and that's fine. But here's the thing. You need to tell them that, because I was like, you're setting yourself up to never have it work out, because this person does not think it's being disrespectful to you to meet you at this lovely restaurant that they're taking you to, right? They don't think that that's bad. But in years past, her meaning had been, oh, if they don't pick me up, they don't respect me. Like, no, you can have that, but you got to tell them, this is meaningful to me. I have a simple request. I would really prefer this. And if they don't give a shit about what you prefer, then you can make a judgment on that, right? Once you ask for it. But all this mind reading crap that women do all the time, expecting people, anyone, well, they should know. No, they don't know. Just stop saying that. They do not know.
Yeah, like assume they don't know.
Always. Assume nobody knows. Only you know what you need and want. And your job is to negotiate for your needs at every turn. And the way that I do it, it's in, that book by, what's his name? It's called Nonviolent Communication. I think it's Norman Rosenthal, Marsha and Norman Rosenthal. Anyway, where you can say to someone, you can ask for anything. And I always preface it by saying, I have a simple request. Listen, people may not be able to do your simple request, but once you say it, your side of the street is clean. Because now you've asked for what you want, with the total understanding that not always is someone going to be able to give that to you. Not always. That's it. That's life. But your healing comes from being brave enough, healthy enough, and grown up enough, and a human enough to ask for what it is that you want. And it also makes you vulnerable. Because like I said to my therapist years ago, if he turned, so what if I let him in? And then he's like, oh, I'd rather watch this basketball game than come to you on the day of your surgery, which of course would never happen, didn't happen. But that's the fear. What if then he reveals that he doesn't value me the way that I think he does? Will I be devastated? Yes. But if that were revealed and I hadn't let him as close, I would be just as devastated. I always say to my clients, you can't protect yourself from disappointment. So let's stop imagining it happening 4,000 times. Maybe it won't happen at all. How about we just live through it once if it does happen?
Right, right.
And you're not that fragile.
Yeah, none of us are. So final question. I love that mug, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough coffee in this mug.
It's like the size of your face. Under the context of Untamed, it literally is. Untamed the Wild Soul Woman. One of the things that has been so beautiful to witness over the course of all these interviews, I think you're like number 26.
Oh my gosh.
Wild is different for everyone. Like your wild soul, your expression of that is super different for everyone. What's yours? What feels like your expression? What does that mean to you?
I think stepping into my power as a leader, I never use the word, but a healer, like I'm a transformation expert, and pulling my own chair up to the table in this past 2 years, knowing that what I do, no one else does, which is true for all of you listening, but like allowing myself that, stop comparing myself to other people, knowing that I'm awesome and that I have a really important place in helping people heal themselves, realize that they have everything they need already right now. So it isn't about becoming somebody's guru. It's about literally having the most awesome flashlight to help them look inside to find what it is that their dharma, what is your purpose in life, and help them get into great relationships and love themselves. So much of the work that I do is giving women permission to fall madly and deeply in love with themselves, knowing that everything else will fall into place. If you prioritize your own pleasure, your own importance, your own health, everything that you seek is on the other side of that. And so that's wild, you know?
And it's actually why I fell in love with you, because actually our missions, our purpose, our work is exactly the same. And the approach is so different, but it's like we're all on the same team. I remember that was so funny. I just came swarming back to me when you said that we were at Soul Camp back in September, and Terri and I were speaking back to back, and she literally ended her message on the note I was starting my message on, which is what you just said, that like everything you need is already inside of you. Like you arrived with everything. There's nothing outside of you that's going to make you any better. So amazing. So you're the best. It's always so much freaking fun. This is so great that we got to basically chat. These are kind of like how we talk anyway.
Of course,
this one is just recorded and gets shared with other people. So your website is terricole.com. Are you going to leave the 21-day meditation integration? Is that up or is that ever coming down?
It's actually for sale on the website right now, but I also have tons of free meditations as well that are out there in the world. So if somebody wants to buy it on the website, it's $20.
I mean, it's $20. It's the best friggin' $20 you'll ever spend. As a person who has been trying to meditate, I do, but I've never meditated so consistently since I did your 21 days. So highly, highly recommend that to everyone listening. It is the best. And you hear her voice. Who doesn't want to listen to Terri Cole's voice every single day of their life? It's so soothing. I love it. And I know you have some other amazing things coming out in 2015, New Year, Liz.
Yes.
So just go check her out. She's the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Liz. I love you.
I love you too. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, you guys.
Bye. It first is very important to just accept where you are. Accept that this is how it is and find ways to love your body right now. And one of the best ways to do that is to not get stuck in the trap that a lot of women do. And it's not really our fault because this is hardcore culture and conditioning and programming. We tend to place value on how good our bodies are based on how they look.